Welcome back to another episode of Just
a squirrel
looking
for a nut, trying to get out of this rut. Oh,
not bad.
Oleg, if we had done it another time
Yeah.
and it didn't sound good, I was going to start hating you.
Yeah.
Not just a mild dislike. It would have been hatred. I hate so many things. I hate it when my ice cream goes bad. I hate it when tacos don't taste good. I hate it when I'm walking outside in my best suit and it starts to rain and I look all a mess. How do I pull back from all this hate? And is there anyone else on this show today that I can hate just because I'm in the mood to be talking about hate?
Maybe take a step back and sit in your own discomfort for a little bit, for a year. Take a year off, like we were talking before, a year off from your career and then come back with more life experience.
I think that was a polite way of saying yes. Maybe you should say who else.
I was just thinking about the video or the clip we have at the beginning, and it might be time to add the additional squirrels that we have that join us periodically on the show. So it might be time to expand I don't know what the proper terminology is, but add 2 other squirrels to that.
I wouldn't hate that at all. But who are these others? Who are these? Is one of them here tonight?
He is.
Well, just show me. I need proof.
There he is.
Hello.
Who are you? What are you doing on my show?
Great to be here. My first time as a co-host, contributing host. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for letting me be a squirrel.
Of course.
We know you're going to help us crack that nut. And tonight we are talking about hatred. That's why I'm talking about ice cream and suits in the rain. I hate it when my cake melts in the rain. I don't think that I can take it because it takes a long time to bake it, and I'll never have that recipe again. Oleg, what can we do to stop all the hate?
Well, my opinion of it, so I don't think it's possible to not have hate. And the reason why I believe that is because I think it's that kind of duality point of view where it gives perspective and it gives appreciation to the opposite of hate. I think for many years, I remember when I would have different conversations with people, and oftentimes what I would hear is, I wish that either people stop hating each other or hate didn't exist or X, Y, and Z, essentially trying to get rid of evil. And what I've realized over time, at least my opinion of it, is even though I might have shared similar things within my life, I think if anything, it's an aspiration. I think if anything, it's an aspiration to live without one and with the other. But I don't know if the other one would exist, if I'm being honest. I don't know if the opposite of hate, let's say in this case, it's love. I don't think love would exist in the same exact way. And I think if anything, love might be a concept that will go unappreciated, just like anything else. Like if there isn't I guess you could say an extreme polar opposite of the concept, it's harder to appreciate things. I mean, think about it this way. We get to experience a thing called oxygen. But do you really get to appreciate that? Because the opposite doesn't exist as much in your life, besides maybe a handful of situations when you lack oxygen, whether you're exercising or whatever it might be. So I think hate is a similar concept. I think if it didn't exist, I think it would, for me at least, in my opinion, it would be harder to appreciate the concepts of love and whatever the other opposites might be within that.
Well, I can tell you one thing that is the opposite of hate that is right in front of my face right now, and that is homegirl Melody. It is good to see you. I don't know what the opposite of hate is. I don't even know that I think that love is the opposite of hate, but what do I know? But I can tell you this, that you are the opposite of hate. Everything that I've seen and heard from you shows you to be not only an excellent writer, but a person with a huge heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Hate and the opposite. Is love really the opposite of hate? Once someone told me that indifference was the opposite of hate.
That's a good question. I'm going to have the former lawyer answer that one.
So what is the opposite of hate?
Mhm.
I have always said that love is the opposite of fear.
Mhm.
So,
Whoa, why are you saying that?
well,
Where did that come from?
so hate, what's the opposite of hate then? If we hate something, then it's displeasure that, so if we unpack, what is hate then? Hate is a virulent aversion to, a need to destroy, possibly. If you hate the Jews, you want to gas them, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you hate losing your taco, you want to replace it, maybe. So I don't know what the duality is yet. I think we'll come up to it. I will say that I agree that I don't think we'll ever be free of hate. And that's a depressing thing to say. But if we kind of unpack what the sentence is, I agree with the duality that Oleg brought up. And even beyond appreciation, if we go and we can always count on Oleg for appreciation and thank yous, right? So
Very
he always
true.
reminds me, I'm always like, God, I got to thank people more.
Yeah.
But we need hate. And we need hate in this world, or it's just in this world. Saying a world full of love or full of like, whatever the opposite is saying like a world of always up, a world of always good, a world of of always sunny. It always up doesn't happen, so we're going to be free. We'll never be free of hate. One, because it enables us to appreciate it, but two, the world is duality. The world is opposites, but that's really only through our perception. Now, I want to get to the word we in a moment because we've been focusing on hate. But Scott, your thoughts on what I just said about always up?
Yeah, that's sort of like asking for a world with just Scott and no Oleg.
That's right.
What kind of sense does that? Well, let me tell you something though. If hate is something we're never going to get rid of, if it serves this important function, and if the world just would not be anything without it, how do we know when we have crossed the line into having too much hate? Maybe some of us are just meant to hate. Maybe hate is something we should lean into a little more. If I just became a more hateful, spiteful, nasty person, maybe people would love and appreciate the beauty in the world a little more. Is that what you're trying to say that I should do? I could be good at hate.
So let's unpack the we.
We hate that word.
We hate that word. We is, and I'm riffing here, but I think, we is this idea in will we ever be free of hate? The same we that's trying to free us of hate is the we that is to be freed of it. So the we is the subject and the object at the same time. That can't happen. You can't be the subject and object. So it's like, as Alan Watts said, it's like pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. You can't do that. You're just going to keep tugging. You're not going to go up. So what that then begs the question is there something beyond we? And you know where I'm going with it, but it's the energy, it's karma, it's God, it's whatever it is. That's where the unity, that's free of hate. That's what Jesus talked about, the kingdom of heaven, which is inside us all, not outside. But there are places that are free of hate. I don't think we will be free of hate because, Scott, if you were to become very hateful, we are part of we. You're a reflection of us. Hitler was a reflection of the consciousness at the time. Donald Trump was a reflection of the consciousness of the time. And if you look at, in America, the election, which literally came down to 87 votes in Georgia, we are talking about split energy, particularly in this country. So I don't want to say we're schizophrenic, but we have a foot on the gas and we have a foot on the brake at the same time. Now we're moving forward and maybe we're inching ahead inches at a time, but we as a world have a split energy, and I think that's reflected. So Scott, if you went hateful, it's not you doing it, it's we doing it, and you're pretty much a reflection of our split energy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, though, that some hate is actually good? For instance, if I hate someone that's committing genocide, is my hate actually a good thing? Melody says that she thinks hate narrows us. And that's an interesting idea that is well worth exploring during this program. But does it narrow us if it actually could, for instance, lead to greater freedom or less oppression or less human misery?
So, Oleg, you mind if I take this?
Yeah, go ahead.
So David R. Hawkins, the MD, psychologist, he died in 2010. Phenomenal person. These ideas are his. He's got this spectrum of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And anger, which I'll have as a place for hate, is on the lower level of consciousness. But anger is higher as a beneficial emotion than, say, shame or guilt. Mm-hmm. Shame, you're wallowing in bed, you're not moving anywhere. When you're mm-hmm. angry, you actually do something. Okay. Mm-hmm. So now that being said, we know where anger can turn, and hopefully it moves into pride and then courage, and then it moves into other things, right? It evolves. But to your question, I would say no. And this is that is your hate good? If you hate someone, it reminds me of what was it? The Smurf, angry Smurf. I hate hating, right? So the that goes back to my kids and also back to the 80s when I watched Smurf. So, but the issue I'm going to bring up, and it's a great point that you bring up, Scott, and what came to me, and I may ruffle some feathers, some progressive feathers here, and this is Jewish liberal guy from San Francisco, but this whole woke campaign and the far left is totally detrimental to, in my opinion, higher consciousness and peace in the world. The wokeness is not saying I'm enlightened, I view things as neutral, I am loving. Woke is literally saying, if you're not on the left side of the spectrum, I'm going to punch you in the face. And that's what really irritates me about that part of the Democratic Party, is they've kind of co-opted this word awaken and woke from the sages of the past and turned it into a political fire starter. And so I think if you're hating on it, even if it's your side, it doesn't help. The issue is if someone's hating, Scott, to your point, someone is either loving or it's a call for love. And so if someone is hating, is just virulent hating. As a Jewish guy, Hitler was making a call for love. He was so insecure. Germany had lost the war. There was no future. I mean, he wanted to be accepted. Mein Kampf was such anger, but it was deep saying there is such a lack of love in this guy's life, right? Mm-hmm. So what I'm saying is if someone comes from hate, I'm not saying we be walked over. If you got to fight, I'm not saying take it, but I am saying realize that if I come back with hate, that's just adding fuel to the fire. If I come back to them and resist and fight them with love, that's what Gandhi did. That's what MLK did.
Mm-hmm. Is it possible, though, that is an assumption that really isn't fully true? Hate, for instance, perhaps it is a cry for love. And in some cases, I have no doubt that it is. But perhaps it's just the baseline emotion of who and what that person is. Maybe they find enjoyment out of it. Maybe they find power in it. Maybe they just get a good old kick out of the strength of that emotion. Hello, Phil, by the way, and it is great to see you here. Welcome, and we want to hear your thoughts on this conversation, and Melody's been giving us some good feedback for us to bounce back and forth on. Oleg, you have been suspiciously silent. I don't want you to start hating on me. Talk!
No, I'm just respecting the opinions that are being shared through this. So I think there are a couple of things that I heard that I wanted to expand upon. First is the hierarchy that Casey was talking about. I find it fascinating how he was able to pair certain words with the frequencies. And I don't know if you're aware of it, Scott, but literally he has a chart where David R. Hawkins breaks down the words, and then right next to it are the frequencies that those words vibrate at. So love compared to shame, guilt, embarrassment, and etc. The thing that I find interesting, I think, for me about hate is I think that, in my opinion, it's only detrimental when it's being used to put down someone else. for example, if you were to express to me that you hate that kind of ice cream, or you hate this type of shoe because it gives you blisters or whatever.
Justin Bieber.
That's where it's putting the individual down.
Yes.
That's where I think
I don't think Scott minds. I think Scott's like, yes.
Justin Bieber needed to be put down.
Yes, exactly.
That's where I think for me it crosses the line personally. So I will choose to interject, and it's also interesting to observe in that situation, what do you do as an individual, right? So I'll give you an example. One of my friends and I, both of you know her, but just for utter disclosure, I won't mention her name on the show, but her and I had this conversation where we hear people say, I hate this, I hate that. And what both of us are doing is we actually try and correct the individual. So we'll ask them, did you actually mean you dislike this? And you dislike that instead of hating it? Because I do think that hate is such a strong term, where I think there are other words that the person might be trying to use to communicate the point. You know, like going back to your ice cream example, I mean, do you truly hate that particular flavor, or do you just like the way that it's served, how it tastes to you today, how it's wrapped, all these other things? So that's where I think, going back to Casey's point, something he has made many times, sometimes words are inexact. Language is inexact. You know, I think I know what I'm saying half the time, when the reality of the matter is I'm just saying words. I find it slight tangent here, but I was watching video. It was Jim Carrey. I've been learning a lot about his life and just his approach to life in the recent weeks. And there's this one video where he gives a speech. It's a commencement speech to either a high school or a college. And he's talking about this concept of belief and manifestation, and how, you know, he thinks he knows when it's going to happen and how it's going to happen and stuff like that. And then he closes the whole speech by saying, you know, I have no idea. I'm just saying a bunch of words here. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know what actually contributes to it. So that goes back to my point of words are inexact. And as much as I think I'm communicating the meaning of certain things, I don't think I always am. Going back to that ice cream, do I really hate that ice cream, or do I simply dislike something about it? So that's where I think perspective, one's viewpoint, and one's lens plays a role. But then at the same time, what are those universal actions that, as you were mentioning, Scott, that we do hate, so to speak? You know, when you look at like things like, I don't know, not to get too deep into this, but you look into certain ways executions are done, public versus private, electric chair or not. Do we hate one? Do we not hate the other? And then at the end of the day, my only other question is, whose perspective is wrong and whose perspective is right?
Well, it makes me wonder about a couple things. But before I get to that, Jessica, it is good to see you here. And thank you, by the way. I don't know if you brought your husband or if he brought you, or if you all just happened to show up here together, but it is good to have a married couple in the house here, especially y'all are both such wonderful people. And Melody and you are sort of addressing the same things, which is perception. And Oleg just touched on a little bit. Oleg and Casey, I actually have a question then that is embedded in what you said. And that is really whether there are two different meanings of the word hate altogether, and it is dependent on what it is that's being hated. So now, to quote Justin Bieber, I don't hate you. I will say, Justin, as you said so beautifully.
Our show can live on.
I'm sorry. I just want to say I'm sorry, Justin. But in any event, you all, it's one thing, as you said, Oleg, to hate a person, but an action, an idea, or an object are those things that are qualitatively different as the things being hated. Is it okay to hate an action, a gruesome form of execution that causes people to suffer? Or the actions of someone who goes around hurting other people all the time, as opposed to hating the person?
Well, I guess for me, the question is, and maybe this is something Casey can weigh in as well, but why is it acceptable to hate a person? Or, sorry, the other way around. Why is it not acceptable to hate a person, but it's acceptable to hate a chair? Why is it acceptable to hate a dog, but not hate an individual? So I think it goes back to the hierarchy and how certain things are viewed. And I've been curious about this for quite some time, as far as just my own curiosity of it. Like, why are certain things more acceptable than others? And maybe it speaks to, I don't know what it speaks to. Because if you think about it, and if you believe, and I don't want to project my beliefs on anyone else, but if you believe in the concept that everything has energy, the chair has, I don't know, equal or less, it's kind of hard to measure energy compared to a human. The dog has the same energy, might be just a different variation of it. So I guess the question is, when did that become an acceptable thing? Or why does it appear to be more acceptable to hate a chair that can't do anything in return, can't even respond? Well, I guess it could respond, it could break, but then it's not acceptable to hate a person.
By the way, martial artist, businessman, deep thinker, Jason Villanueva in the house. Yo, homie, good to see you. I would like anyone who responds to Oleg's remarks to try and weave in Jason's too. Casey, you've got this thing in your head. It's called a brain. Use it.
So, Jason talks about hate and love are one and the same. And I think that you have a choice whether you want to hate or love. God, nature, karma is all love. It's all unity. It's infinity. That, though, is hard to comprehend. And so the reason, as Oleg mentioned earlier, that we have hate is to enable us, again, so it's not all up. We need something to help us appreciate. We need something to see the other side. When I think of why we hate a chair but can't hate a person, when you think about what's driving the hate, hate is there's more energy in hate than dislike. There's more fuel in hate. There's more emotion. There's more to lose. There's more having already been lost in hate. And what that really means is you got to underlying what is in that hate. So if you hate a chair, it brings back a bad experience, or you feel bad you can't afford that chair. You hate a person, you're jealous of the person, the person has wronged you. What I really think is the thing we all hate the most, and that we reserve, we being everyone, that we reserve hate for the most, is ourself. And I think self-hate and self-loathing is at the crux, if not the crux, of all of this. Because if you're going to project a hate out onto something, whether a rainy day or whether a chair or whether a pop star, what does that say about us? I know there's a person who moved into the neighborhood here who just much more successful than me and now lives down the block and house is bigger, all that sort of stuff, right? I just wasn't feeling good. This was just last Tuesday. I wasn't feeling the best feelings for this guy. Why? Nothing to do with him. He's living his life. We all know why. Because I'm not really liking my position. And so I wouldn't call it self-hate or self-loathing, but it's an element of that. And so what I'm going to throw out there is that we can look externally to all of this around hate, but really, I think the biggest amount, will we ever be free of hate? We'll be free of hate when we kind of break away from this illusion that external matters and that we are less than what we need to be, that we'll break free of this hate when this whole notion of original sin, this whole notion of separation, this whole notion that we have done something wrong goes away.
So does that, I guess for me, it just raises another question, Casey, as a follow-up to what you said. If you, and if I misquote you here, please correct me. But if you believe in this concept that it all boils down to the self-hate, therefore, at least how I'm understanding this is that everything is a direct reflection of who you are. So everything is one, so to speak. So the chair is one, the other person is one. And so if anything, it's like the hate that I'm projecting onto the other person most likely stems from the conflict that I am experiencing internally to begin with. Correct?
That's right. Now, yes. Now, in this world, if you and I are furniture shopping and you say, I hate that chair, and then I say, hey, man, you're one with that chair, I'm going to be locked up, right? Or I'm not going to make it. So I understand we're in the matrix, right? So I'm not going to say that, where the 2 cents that I'm providing is inside when someone says, I hate that chair, or if I'm getting that feeling of I'm hating that dude, I just want to take a step back, tap into the other dimension and say, why are you saying that, man? You don't have to take your words back, but you're saying that because you're projecting onto this person that he is XYZ better. I'm also projecting onto myself that I'm XYZ inferior.
I've got to say I have a bit of a problem with that. I think that's true in some... What'd you say?
I thought you might. Bring it on. Let's do it.
Yeah. I've got a chip on my shoulder with that answer's name on it. And the reason why I have a chip on my shoulder with that answer's name on it is because I feel like that's an overgeneralization. Yes, I'm sure that's true in some cases, but not everyone in the world has a self-esteem problem. And I feel like personally, the challenge I have is that it's applying self-esteem issues and self-esteem thinking to people like me who don't have a self-esteem problem. What if I hate everybody? What if I hate you, or I hate Oleg, or I hate my husband secretly because I think I'm better than everyone else, and I have to condescend to be around all of these normal, regular people all the time? I read a book called How the Garcia Girls Lost Their Accent, and one of the characters in it, or maybe it was a different book, but in any event, what happened was there was an older white lady from the South who was old school in terms of her racial views. And one of her children had married outside of the race, and she had to bear the indignity of having a biracial child. Now, that really wasn't the focus. What she hated was having to endure life where people around her suddenly that she viewed as inferior to her, these racial minorities, were in her close circles. She wasn't upset about herself. She didn't feel like she was deficient. She felt that everyone else was. Maybe someone, and I won't name any redheaded people or orange-haired people or anything like that, but maybe some of those people are full of hate because they honestly think they are superior or entitled or have been given more by the universe or God or whatever it is than other people. And that purely is the source of it. How can you not even concede that that's a possibility, Mr. Berman?
So I'm not equating, it's a great point, but I'm not equating self-worth with separation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean?
Well, what I mean, so if we have self-hate, what I'm saying is that we feel, to quote Hobbes, life is brutal and short, right? Life is, money doesn't grow on trees, no pain, no gain. I would say everyone here, consciously or subconsciously, thinks that we are individual beings in this body, this container of skin, and we are all separate. We all think we're separate. We all go to these big buildings with domes and crosses or stars or crescent suns on them. We fear God. We pay money. We do alms. We do whatever we can just so that we don't go to hell, and we've got to stay in the good graces. Yom Kippur, as a Jew, even though we don't believe in hell, you better believe people go on Yom Kippur and we fast and we wear a tie, whatever we can do to get in the book of life for another year. Every religion got it. We all are coming from fear. We live in a fear-based world, and this is beyond just the media, which exacerbates everything. We live in a fear-based, I'm separate, the world is different. And this goes back 200,000 years to when we first had cognition and culture and language. And our Neanderthals said, you're I'm E. We had voices, and now we had identities, right? So we're all separate. That's a separation. So what I'm saying is when we finally realize that we're not separate, that we're all one, that then there's no one. You need an object to hate. You need a second thing to hate. When we realize we're all one, then we can only hate ourselves. And why would we want to do that? We're just not conscious of it. But self-esteem, but in your example, Mr. Mason, someone who is condescending and thinks they're superior, for me, that's not self-esteem. That is pure weakness. That is a lack of love. That is hate coming from, I mean, that's a call for love. That's saying, I am not enough. The woman in the book that you mentioned, the person with the reddish hair that you mentioned, I have such pity for those people. They are so broken on the inside. They are such a facade. They're bullies. And every bully I've met in person or read about is such a weakling, but has this facade of strength. Again, MLK, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Jesus, Buddha, and so many other sages that I've seen in the life, in my life and otherwise, they have self-esteem, but they don't need to be out front of it. So I would say anyone who's condescending or doing that, that's not self-esteem at all. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's fear. And they feel alone. They feel separate.
I read an article in Psychology Today, though, that had a contrary view, which was that a lot of people, and I'll just say those that are particularly highly narcissistic are the ones that I'm talking about, people with orange hair, that have, if I didn't say that, sorry. In any event, those people sometimes, according to this study, which was based on self-reported data, knew that they were narcissistic and just decided to kick back, lean into it, and enjoy it. So is it really that they're feeling, maybe that separation is something that they enjoy? Maybe they're like, yeah, I'm separate and that rocks because I'm so much better than all these other people. And why not lean into it? Because it's fun.
You can lean into it. It's a choice that we make. You can lean into it. People can lean into the hate. They can lean into it in all day long, without a doubt, which is why we won't ever be free. But we don't need to be free of it as long as we want to stay here. So Hinduism, there's Maya. It's an illusion. And the karma isn't, hey, you got your karma, you got good luck or bad luck. Karma is literally this wheel of just continuing on the actions. And the idea is you want to continue in this bodily form and go in another lifetime, go right ahead. The question is for many of us is when you, to quote Jesus again, Jesus was done. Jesus came back and he said, I'm out of here. I don't need this anymore. I'm going celestial, right? So the question I would say is we can keep leaning into hate and people are doing it. But with the power of the internet, with the power of the sages that we've had, remember, we've really only had, the agricultural revolution was 10,000 years ago. Writing came soon after. Abraham and all of this was really 3,600 years ago. So we haven't been around here that long. But if you talk to a religious Hindu, and if the Hindus have it right, when you break free of this illusion that we're all separate, you move away from you move beyond the matrix. You see ones and zeros and you go to unity. You go back to the source. If you don't want to do that now, live another lifetime. And maybe you need to live another lifetime to
get myself together.
To get yourself together. Now, this is a type A, evidence-based, data-backed, liberal, non-God believing Jewish guy from San Francisco saying this, lawyer, right? Empirical evidence. I need the evidence. And even I am saying at 47 years old, maybe everything I see in my five senses, maybe there's more than that.
I'll also say, I think when it comes to separation, I think there is beauty within that because for me, as Casey, you were mentioning that there's a choice. Now, whether or not one chooses to view it that there's a choice, I think that's a topic for another conversation. But let's say hypothetically, we, at least the three of us, might agree that there is a choice to choose between one or the other or the third. And I think for me, that choice has been there. And that when I look at separation, I personally right now appreciate the variety of perspective. I appreciate the fact that other people surrounding me have a different view or different way of viewing certain things in life. Now, I may not always agree with things. And in fact, if I'm being honest, I may not always even agree to disagree. There might be times where I just straight up disagree with the thing according to the lens that I see it. Now, I think that's also goes back to the point, though. I think that there's that choice between, do you choose to look at the lives of others and the way that they get to experience their own existence on this planet, and what's the choice that you make when it comes to your own life? Do you choose to once again approach it through, I hate this, I hate that, or I dislike certain things about it, but I can respect others? Or do you appreciate? Do you appreciate the fact that Casey likes green, I like blue, and Scott likes orange? Do we appreciate that variety because it allows, I think, once again, go back to appreciation. It gives me greater appreciation. Now I can appreciate my lens and my color, so to speak, because I can see the diversity of things surrounding me.
Well, Oleg, I want to ask you about that then, because if what Casey is positing is true, and some of the audience members who regularly participate in the show have not directly said as much, but have implied as much if you read between the lines of some of their comments or you look at them in totality, which is that there is a universal consciousness. Mm-hmm. Or an infinite consciousness, love, that is the big C, for lack of a better word, that is the universe. Mm-hmm. And that we, as I'm understanding what Casey said earlier, if we hate in a way, we're hating ourselves, because really what we are different. If my palm was this universal wave, then the fingers that come out into the world, into the matrix, are merely fingers of that larger ocean. And if this finger is hating this finger, well, it's all part of the same hand. It's sort of hating itself ultimately. And embedded in that, then, this sense of unity and completeness and wholeness, is that conceptually something that you would hate? Because if that's true, is it not logical to assume that, or at least implicit, that all of these perspectives are all illusory, that we all really are just seeing the same things?
Well, I think it brings up the point of how real is real. And I think what it makes me think of is that my reality may be different from your reality, but your reality is not necessarily any better than my reality, or any worse, or vice versa. I think the other thing that, I guess, talking about common threads that people have shared within this conversation, when it comes to certain personalities and people go through. So first things first, I think it's very difficult for me to understand what anyone is going through or what they might be feeling unless I choose to have a conversation with them. What I mean by that is not every narcissist is the same. Not every single person who's lonely is looking for the same exact thing to complete their puzzle, so they're no longer lonely. So I think there might be an overarching ingredient that might be a common thread amongst them all. But I guess for me, how I try and approach these things is I really try not to assume, period. Not even try and make logical assumptions. Because the reality of the matter is, once I start to make logical assumptions, or what appear to be logical assumptions to me, that's where I put myself in positions where I've made certain assumptions, therefore I can make certain judgments, therefore I narrow down the space for the other individual to openly express what it is that they're seeking. You know, we're sitting here, however many years later it's been, I don't know, 60, 80 years post World War II, and we can analyze all the different things that Hitler was wanting, was looking, based on how his childhood was like, based on what he experienced during the war and after, you know, all these other things. But at the end of the day, those are just all assumptions. We may think that he was looking for that, when the reality of the matter was he might have been looking for something completely different. So that's where I think there is for me, I don't know if it's necessarily a danger, but let's say for the context of this conversation, I think there is a danger to assuming things that you may not know, but rather challenging things that this is an assumption that I'm making, and I don't know whether or not it's true.
I've got to ask you, Oleg, if you could understand, if you could see and understand everyone's perspective that there was, you somehow had that incredible degree of mental power, which really would be beyond what any human realistically could have. But if you could, would you?
I think I would. Well, that's a difficult question to answer. So I think to a degree, right now in who I am today, I'm able to understand people on a much deeper level than I used to. But I will also say that it's a two-way street. Me understanding what it is that you're sharing and how it is that you're processing is one way. You communicating all of that is another. You might not have the language, the courage, the confidence, the whatever to communicate what you're feeling internally. So it's going to be interpreted in a different way externally by me. So I think if anything, maybe the question that you asked leads to, is it possible to get a complete understanding of anything in life? And if so, would it have a purpose? I think it goes back to how we started this conversation. I think if I was able to fully understand someone, I would lose the perspective. I would lose certain elements of that experience that a lack of understanding is able to provide to me. For example, a lack of understanding provokes questions. Those questions can lead into other questions and other areas and other subjects that may not even be discussed in that conversation to begin with. If you come to me with a complete understanding, there's no reason for me to ask another question.
So I think that you can already know what people are thinking. And I think there is an assumption you can make. When people do something, they get a benefit from it. You do something because you want something. You jog because you want to lose weight, or because you want the quiet time, or because you want to impress someone else, or because you feel you should. You eat to nourish your body, to fill an emotional hole. There's always something. You're getting something, whether you realize it subconsciously or not. And one thing that David R. Hawkins talks about are cheap payoffs, little cheap payoffs. When we hate, you get a payoff. You get something. So my son last night, 2 nights ago, wouldn't put on his effing pajamas. I mean, go to sleep.
We have an Adrian moment here.
And put on your pajamas.
I love you, Adrian, if you're watching this. Go ahead.
Put on your pajamas. And you can't say pajamas. They're pajamas. I'm so sick of it, man. I'm so sick of it. You know, put on your pajamas. I hate it. I'm so sick of it. What do I get from that as the father? Right? Because then we get in an argument, put them on. I don't want to put them on. And then now we ruin a good day, right? Because now we're arguing about something at 9:15 at night. And what do I get out of it if I hate that? I get to say, see, the world sucks. See, my son disrespected me. See, I told you everyone hates me. I told you the world sucks. I told you I should play small. I told you I shouldn't do this. So when it comes to hate, when it comes to anything, David R. Hawkins encouraged us, and I just think it's totally right. What is the payoff that we get from it? And it may be ironic to say, well, why would you stay small? Don't you want to be big? Now, Scott may say, I have a bunch of self-esteem. I don't want to stay small. I want to be a big shot. I want to make a bunch of money. I'm not afraid of the stage. Fine. But there's some other maybe it's a chip on the shoulder. See, I want to show everyone that I'm good. I need to keep showing those doubters out there. I want to rub it in their face and keep showing them that a small town kid can make it. Whatever it is, whether it's keeping the chip on the shoulder, whether it's playing small, playing safe, whatever it is, anything we do for what we think is a benefit. even if ironically it looks like it's something that we wouldn't want.
Mm-hmm. Hey, slightly unrelated question. Maybe this is a question to both of you. What's the purpose of PJs? Obviously, besides keeping, yourself clothed. And then at what age does that no longer become a thing?
PJs, pajamas?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of pajamas?
Yeah. Why do we wear them?
That's a good question. I've always thought they were ridiculous. But that's just me.
Wait, ridiculous? You guys, seriously, you two?
It's
to
a
keep you
serious
warm?
question.
To keep you warm? Like if you put your arm outside of the sheets, it's exposed. If you don't have a long sleeve, your arm's going to get cold.
Well, then what you do is you pull your arm back in.
Under the blanket.
No, but I'd like to put it out of the sheet.
Is that a legitimate, or do you just hate having it within the sheet?
But I don't wear pajamas anymore. I mean, I have pajama pants and a shirt. My kids give me a hard time because I wear old t-shirts.
Yeah.
Which technically are not pajamas. So, but
like, I've never understood that. And that was a serious question, by the way, because when I was younger, my parents did the same thing. My parents said, like, do you have your PJs on? And I'll say yes. And then there became a certain age where that question just stopped coming up. And I don't know whether it was at a point where I could make my own decision, so to speak. But I
think it's when you got drunk. You got drunk and fell asleep in your clothes. That's right. That's when I think you stopped wearing. We just passed out on your bed.
But
in your shoes, right?
I
never fully understood that. It's like,
no, I can pinpoint when it happened.
Blanket, Yeah.
Do you make your dog wear pajamas?
No.
No.
Well, some people do.
Pajamas. No, it's a good question. Everyone's got their own version.
Yeah.
So,
and you can't hate. Well, I guess you could hate, but
you could hate. But what payoff do you get?
Yeah.
I will admit, as much as I like to argue with you about everything, Casey, just because I love you, it's that that we do get a payoff with everything. And the point that you're making about hatred, even if you are a narcissistic person or someone with some other disorder, you are feeling superior or whatever because of a payoff. I am curious to what extent a dominant payoff that comes with hatred in particular is something that you mentioned in passing, which is being right or righteous.
Yeah.
I'm a good person, not those people, those homosexuals that I'm going to send to death camps. I'm a good person, not those heathens I'm right, not those heathens that should be punished for worshiping a different deity than me. I am right, or I am self-righteous and somehow personally gratified by the fact that I am not part of that minority group that I'm going to keep from voting, or that I'm going to segregate, or those criminals that are trying to get into the United States, and they're disgusting little children. And I'm saying that all facetiously, that go into cages. Or on the reverse side, I am better, or I am right when I tell you can't use the word tribe anymore, and you're a racist because you use the word tribe. Or I'm right because you said something with a tone of voice that I personally find offensive.
Yeah. No, the Republic, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? And the Republican Party is destroying itself to make sure, though, in the present, it stays right.
Is it just the Republican Party? Well, I mean, is it like I tend to think it's a cultural disease across the board. I personally.
Well, I was just saying that, right? Like, we're going to keep, but yeah. And then you got on the left, you've got that the cancel culture and the self-righteousness that if you look at someone the wrong way, they are not doing it how you want to. And if that's not projection on other people, I don't know what is. And really, it's about, I'm going to hate you because that makes me right. And my take would be, how good, like, how happy are you? How at peace, how confident, whatever your definition of happiness is, I will tell you, it's being right. We think makes us happy. It doesn't make us happy. It makes us temporarily more powerful, more superior, more righteous. I don't think it makes us happy. It doesn't give us calm or peace or alignment. Now, I think we're all fighting to be right. I think the media, I think everything will make it seem like it is. But really the question is, do we want to be happy or right? And I think, unfortunately, in the world, in my opinion, most people want to be right and not happy.
I wonder to what extent I may have been overly narrowing the payoff then from hatred. You said something that really just struck a chord with me, Casey, and I want to thank you for that, which is, in passing, power.
Mm-hmm.
Being right is a form of having power.
Yeah.
And so perhaps a different way of analyzing your question is, do I want power or do I want happiness? Casey, one thing, and I would love to hear both of your remarks on this, honestly. One thing that I struggle with is, as I've said before, on this show or maybe on Oleg's other phenomenal show that we both have the privilege of participating on together,
Mm-hmm.
Casey, which is that I don't seek happiness. So to me, saying, are you going to be happy or do you want more power? That's like asking me, do you want to live on an alien planet or do you want to live in an alternative universe?
Right.
Neither of those are things I particularly am seeking. Well, I don't want powerlessness. I'm not seeking power. And I like being empowered and feeling power in the world. So yes, I will say I like power, but I don't like power being expressed as domination over others or oppression or that sort of thing.
Well, look at the pajama example. I wanted power over my son. I mean, it was I wanted that. And why do I want that? Just because I'm a father and I should have it. Who cares what he sleeps? He was already in comfy pants and a shirt anyway. Like he was fine. Like, well, who cares? But empowered is different than having power, like you said, Scott, in domination. But I think Thomas Jefferson, and I'm agreeing with you, I think Thomas Jefferson was wrong. There's not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you're pursuing happiness, you're messed up. Happiness isn't supposed to be pursued.
That's shocking. Why are you saying that? A lot of people's ears will blow up.
Yeah.
You're just responsible for ears on the floor and covered in blood.
If we're pursuing happiness, we got it wrong. It's
what
wrong.
What are you pursuing then?
If you're pursuing something, then that means you're lacking it. And will you ever get it if you keep pursuing it? I mean, if anything, it's the cheap lead. I mean, it's a lead magnet. If anything, it's a bell and whistle. I mean, he's throwing us a carrot, like in the pursuit of how do you know when you get it? And if you get it, what do you do with it? What are you going to do? So I help lawyers leave the law, and many stay in the law because they want to get the return on investment on their law degree. Well, I spent X years and then I spent this amount of money. Okay, so what are you going to do? I'm going to spend 4 more years as a lawyer, 5 more. How do you know when you get your ROI on law school and being a lawyer and you're student in debt? Well, when I'm 51 and I've done this amount, there's no metric.
I don't even know they're going to live that long.
Exactly, right? Thomas Jefferson, how do I know when I've nabbed and caught happiness? We won't. He's selling us a bill of goods. He's selling us. But and look, I don't know if madmen on Madison Avenue realize this, but the American dream, the white picket fence, the Industrial Revolution was all built on this idea of here, kitty, kitty, kitty. I mean, think about our educational system. And then you come through and then you're mid-40s and you say, you got all your trophies, you got all your degrees, you got everything there. You went from 8th grade and then you went to 12th grade and then you went to undergrad. And now you can't get a job with just a BA. You got to get a master's. And then you got to get to this. You're 29 years old, not a doctor. You're a liberal arts major and you're 29 before you enter the job. Well, then you got to go to VP and then you got to go to manager and director. And then you're 46 years old and you're saying, what? Huh? I thought I'd be happy. So Scott, I don't want to pursue happiness anymore. I'm done pursuing it. It's like going after that. For me, girls, it's going after that girl. If I'm pursuing that girl in high school, in college, it was hard to get them. They didn't want me. I just exuded energy of desperation. So it's the same thing with happiness. Happiness looks at me like, no, you're chasing me. So that's why I want to be calm and take a step back and tell Thomas Jefferson, I'm not pursuing this anymore. I'm going to let it come to me. Or you know what? Maybe I don't even really know what it is. I'm not going to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Oleg, you've always kept yourself a little bit cagey in this discussion.
Uh-huh.
I've never heard you say whether you are happy or seeking happiness. Answer.
Wow. That was actually a mind-blowing statement for me. I never thought about it through that lens. I remember when I was watching literally The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith acting as Chris Gardner, and he talks about that concept. Something about it didn't sit in well with me, and I think the reason why is because a couple of different reasons. I think happiness is a choice. These are all my opinions. A, happiness is a choice. B, half the time, maybe even 90% of the time, or whatever the percentage is, I don't actually even know when I've attained it, if I'm being honest. So what I try and strive for is, I don't personally strive for happiness. I do strive for fulfillment. And I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between happiness and fulfillment. I think fulfillment, to me, how do I know when I'm fulfilled and what does it feel like? It feels like when I'm in alignment with my, so to speak, vision, my mission, everything that I'm doing in life, everything that I'm wanting to experience. That's where I feel like I'm in alignment with a fulfillment. It feels like when I am pushing myself in a way where I'm able to really use my strengths and abilities in the world. I'm able to experience the opposite when I don't do any of those things. So I personally, I guess you could say there is a pursuit for me, and that's the fulfillment. But at the same time, I also try and be cautious about it, as far as I don't strive to reach that ultimate level, so to speak, because I don't think that thing exists. I think if anything, there's a series of choices that I can make on a daily basis to create that space and create that opportunity for me to experience it. But I don't think there is that ultimate thing, just like I don't think there is an ultimate version of success. You know, like Casey was saying during his, how do you explain that? Monologue, right? So as Casey was describing that, like, I agree with you. I viewed that, and I struggled in being part of a traditional educational system, because if I'm being honest, I think a lot of it wasn't a waste of time, because I made the most of it. I went out of my way. I created relationships that still serve me, and I serve them many years down the road. But at the same time, there was just a lot of there was a lot of BS. There was a lot of hoops that I had to jump through before I can get, taking this class before I can sit in this class, talk to this professor before I can talk to this one. Same exact thing. Two of you have a different experience to this. I haven't had the experience to having to climb the corporate ladder, so to speak. So I can't really, I don't think I have an opinion to add there. I don't know what that experience looks like, to go from janitor to manager to CEO, blah, blah, blah. But I will say that for me, the education system was very similar to that. It was that carrot dangling in front of me saying, okay, if you complete this level, you'll get this amount of possible money, possible happiness, possible house, possible car, possible dog, etc. And then if you complete this one, and if I'm being honest, I am fulfilled in my decision because I chose to go other ways. I'm grateful for the fact that I didn't go for a master's. I'm grateful for the fact that I didn't go for a PhD. I'm grateful for the fact that I found my own thing that works well for me, not in comparison to anyone else, but I found that thing that works well for me, and I acted upon it.
Yeah.
And I started to do it. I started to create it. So that's my perspective on it, what I pursue and how it manifests itself in front of me.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
I really felt it, and I want to thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's real. I one thing I appreciate about you two, and I'm doing this more and more as much as I can. Like I'm really trying to show appreciation for people and the impact that they have in my life, because I don't know, I've had this realization in the recent years, and I don't know if Casey, you know him, but a friend of mine, Thomas, really contributed towards this. He made me realize that nothing about tomorrow is guaranteed. Everything about tomorrow is uncertain. I've seen some crazy events happen in the recent years where, you know, people pass within a matter of minutes,
This whole condo collapse in Miami is a horrific example of that.
And that, I think, puts it in perspective. And I think, if anything, what I'm trying to do more of is to just express it in a moment, go the extra mile. But to me, it doesn't even feel like extra mile. It's just like, this is who I know to be on the inside, and this is how I want to express it. So I just want to express like gratitude to the two of you for you guys really like changed my life in a holy shit way. You know, you've helped me develop better language with self. You've helped me become better leader. You've helped me understand how to listen, and how to listen for meaning and not how to listen for words. It's been fascinating. So if there's one thing that I don't hate, it's the presence of both of your lives in mine, in all seriousness.
Thank you.
That's really, we can and we will go on about how special you are. And I almost feel like responding to that in any way other than just a moment of silence and appreciation trivializes it. Just me. So maybe I'll switch the topic a little bit and circle back to the original question. Do you think that the three of us will ever be free of hate? And by that, I don't just mean dislike. Although I have a hard time understanding when hate crosses into dislike, and talking to you people just gets me more confused every week. So I'm just wandering around in a fog at this point in my life. Maybe I'm grateful for that. The fog that you've brought, the mist that you've surrounded my entire mental processes with, Oleg, and Casey as well. Thank you for that. I never knew how blind I was, but now I do. Yes, I'm grateful for that. But on a more serious note, let's assume that we can somehow distinguish when a feeling state has crossed from dislike, such as Oleg's feelings about my graphic art talent, into outright hatred, such as how I might feel about that taco that I've been waiting for hours for.
Yeah.
And then I get it and the meat's not even spicy. That's hate. Will we ever be free?
All I say in regard to your graphic design is that it needs some improvement. That's it.
See, you said earlier you agree to disagree, and then sometimes you just say you disagree. I'll take that as a disagreement, but that's okay. We are going to get back to hate, because you never said that you hate my graphic design.
True.
Will we ever be free of it?
So I think for me, if I'm being honest, it is, I don't want to ever be free of it.
Whoa, why?
And here's why. I think because without it, like we've been having this conversation, I lose appreciation for the other parts of it. Hate is an opportunity to see something that I haven't seen before. Hate is an opportunity to learn something that I did not know before. That's how I look at it. Whenever I see certain, I'll break it down for you. So one of the situations, let's say, where I just disagree, not even agree to disagree, is when it comes to life, the taking of life. I don't believe, especially when it comes to actions made by a living creature, I don't believe in the taking of life, although it is a cycle of life in some situations. I still don't agree with it. So that to me is an area where I have a more difficult time to agree to disagree, because my personal belief is so strong for life. Like I think life is a beautiful journey. that in my opinion shouldn't be dictated by someone else's actions. How long you live, how long you stay alive. That's one area. Agree to disagree as it relates to hate. That's an example of ice cream. You like vanilla ice cream. I like damn, I haven't had ice cream in a while. Cookies and cream, right? Like, what are the flavors still there? I like cookies and cream. That's an agree to disagree moment. You like one, I like the other. Now, I'm not going to hate you for it. That to me is an example of dislike. So I'll agree to disagree. You like this one, I like that one. We'll move on. I think the hate that going back is the individual, putting people down. You hate this person. I hate that person. Why? And I think it goes back to Casey's point. Do we really hate that person, or do we hate an element of ourselves that that person is able to show us? Therefore, going back to the earlier point, that's a learning opportunity. What is this person showing me about myself that I project onto them as hatred? Is their loneliness really the loneliness that I'm experiencing? Is their happiness the happiness that I'm pursuing or going after? That's how I look at it. So going back to your question, I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't want to, because it creates perspective. It allows me to keep going. It allows me to ask more questions. It gets me fired up about life, because then I can sit there and think and like be alive, as we were talking about however many weeks ago with Lachelle. To me, the feeling of being alive is the ability to question and observe life. And I think if I didn't have the other extreme of it, I think very few questions would come from it. That's my opinion of it. Now, Casey might have a different opinion of it, and Scott, you might as well have a different opinion of it as well.
You're on mute, Scott.
But we don't hate you for it. Don't worry.
I'm disappointed to hear that. Casey, will you ever be free of hate?
So hate is a concept. And just like 13 is a concept. The Capitol building is a physical representation of a concept, which is our Republican form of government. I mean, can you touch a Republican form of government? Can you touch 13 with sense it with our five senses? Can you touch, feel, smell? You feel it. Hate is that feeling, and the feeling comes from a thought. You think it, and then you get that in your body. It's a vibration. So hate's a concept. So will I be free of it? As long as the concept is there, I won't. Now, the concept can help Oleg appreciate things. Some people hate, and it makes them scared. Oleg is more enlightened, and he uses it to appreciate, which is a great way to make it beneficial. But hate is really just a concept. And to my earlier point around separation, the thought that leads to hate, I think that thought is engendered by this feeling of by this thought, by this concept, by this, I don't even know the noun. This is where words fail me. This is where language is limited. But of this blank of separation, this blank of I'm alone. It's original sin. It's the banishment from the garden. There's a lot of stories around this. And if that separation, if that the Maya, the illusion, if we no longer feel separated from our source, that's why people go camping, to get back to nature.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't feel so separated, I have a feeling that the thought that leads to hate would steadily decrease.
Mm. Mr. Mason, what are your thoughts? You can't ask us that question and not express whether or not that's a reality you would want to live in.
You all have given So much to think about. I will go back to the payback concept, which is the one real, I've always been conscious of the idea that feeling states, actions, or any of a number of other elements of the human condition lead to a payoff. And that payoff is what we seek. One of the most challenging things I find about being in the self-improvement state or space is disciplining myself to be cognizant of the true nature of the payoff, and acknowledging that there's a payoff that's there. I haven't conceptualized a payoff as cheap yet. Reminds me of some other things that can be cheap, but I won't say that on this show. It can, though, be a payoff that is temporary, but later makes me feel disgusting and gross. It is like drinking that old school diet soda where it tasted awesome and then you wanted to like get a napkin and wipe your tongue off. Times when I've felt hatred, there have been times when I felt it and caught myself in it and then gone into a deeper analysis as to what I'm really feeling. And I won't lie with you, Casey. A lot of times it really has. Most of the time it's been insecurity on my part or jealousy. There were times when I just, exactly like you and your neighbor, I hated guys at the gym. Really, why did I hate them? Because they were good looking and I wasn't. Because they had bigger muscles than I did and I was working harder than them. Or they were getting all sorts of attention from all the other people that I wanted to have paying attention to me, rather than mining my own strengths and virtues. I chose to get that very temporary, what you would call cheap payoff of feeling hatred and feeling better than them, or feeling a difference in power, a fake power, equanimity that came through having that emotion. Now I feel that I'm able to analyze it most of the time, and there may be a little bit of a gap, but I'm able to pull myself away from that. The reason why I go through all of that detail is because I don't know that I ever will be. I don't know that really, Oleg, I can fully align with you about not wanting to be free of it, because that feeling of the things that generate my hate when I hate are things that are areas where I'm refusing to jump in a little more. Perhaps the hate would be something that I'd be more comfortable with. And maybe over time, as I ponder over this conversation, I'll think about the hate and say, ultimately, maybe the hate really does have a place in my life because it's pointing to an area of self-improvement that I need to make, or it's pointing to an area of insecurity that I need to analyze and rethink. So I don't want to hold myself to this position permanently. The illuminating nature of this conversation has forced me to rethink something that I thought walking into the show today was fundamental. It's not. But I would love to not have that feeling, that aftertaste that I feel so often when there's hate. I don't like it. It's not good.
Is it also fair to assume, in regard to what you just said, Scott, and by no means take this as a way of me trying to correct what you said or anything, but rather just expand upon what you said?
Correct me.
I'm okay. You can do that on your own. But is it fair to assume that the things that you might not be wanting to step into as far as the concepts of hate, that those are also things that are not permanent, that those things might evolve over time, that a variety of experiences and perspectives might create the possibility, however many years down the road, where those could become subjects, not necessarily up to interpretation, but rather exploratory areas?
I think it depends, because there are experiences that I might have had that could lead to these subconscious triggers for hate.
Yeah.
age comes to mind. If I'm 90 years old and I'm hating someone because they're looking good and they're age 30,
Yeah.
will that condition get better? Probably not. Unless some radical technological changes happen pretty soon, I'll still be getting older.
Mhm.
I could, of course, reframe aging, but aging is something that it tends to reframe you rather than you just being able to reframe it.
Yeah.
But that being said, age can be reframed, so I don't want to just make a blanket statement, but that one's a little bit more challenging. Illness. I could imagine myself in a situation where I have a permanent debilitating illness. Like, let's say, God forbid, and I would hope this would never happen, that I would have something that might paralyze me. Would there be moments when I feel hatred of those that can walk?
Mm-hmm.
I might not. I don't know. Having not been in that situation, whether that's something that I would be able to reframe or to be able to go deeper and deeper and deeper into that experience and necessarily feel differently about. Although from what I've read, there are humans that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
And they live amazing lives. So again, I don't want to foreclose it. It's just, I've been very lucky in life. And this is an area of appreciation that you're just ringing a bell for me, that I haven't been in a life situation yet where what I've had to face has been so indescribably catastrophic that I can't imagine a time in which which it might not be in which it might not be truly permanent, or it might be permanent. And if it really is permanent, then I can't imagine what that would be like to process that internally.
Well, as an example, I can say here in San Francisco, I live on a mountain in the middle of the city, and we see the ocean. And today's a gorgeous, beautiful summer day. But we have days here in San Francisco where it's foggy. It's cool during the summer. It's gray. You've probably heard of that. And it's 60 degrees in the middle of July. The tourists are going crazy. And I'll sit here and I'll say, it's July. It's all gray out. It's cold. Everyone else in America in the Western Hemisphere is in shorts and a t-shirt and eating popsicles. And I got a parka on. This sucks. And you feel some people love the gray. My wife and I do not. And you want the heat. It's July. It's un-American to not see the 4th of July fireworks, right? There's a gray cloud. So I feel it just gets to me. And you talk about paralysis. I mean, I'm nowhere even near, I'm not paralyzed, but I just feel this virulent jealousy and dislike and hatred that I'm just so jealous of everyone else who's in shorts and a t-shirt and chilling in their back lawn. And here I am in a cold, gray, foggy, depressing July day. And that's just the weather. And so that sets me off. And, that really pushes me. And unfortunately, if anything bad happened to me in that way, I know I would feel it. Doesn't mean I couldn't get out of it. Doesn't mean that I couldn't resolve it or appreciate the situation. But I know if that's such a menial thing with the weather, if anything was even more severe, you're human. You're going to feel it. A thought would pop in your head. You can't prevent that thought.
Mm-hmm. What is your guys' relationship with aging? Do you like it? Dislike it? How do you feel?
I like it. I feel out of touch from a 22-year-old, but I'm 47, and that's just what it is. But I like it. I feel that I'm really hitting my stride, and I'm really age for me I mean, I've definitely felt my insecurities. I've definitely felt old. I've definitely felt out of touch. I mean, there's moments of, oh God, I'm old, but in what I'm doing, I see much more of a benefit. It's not a scarlet letter for me. It's kind of driving what I'm able to do, a lot of it professionally.
Mm-hmm. Scott, how do you feel about it?
I was actually thinking about this morning on my morning walk. I feel very lucky. And I say what I'm about to say, hoping I'm not jinxing myself, but I really do feel lucky. I feel like age has been very, very kind to me. And that's something I feel a huge amount of gratitude for. 2 instances came to mind. There was a friend of mine who turned 50 or so many years, he was about 11 years older than me. So when he turned 50, he said, Scott, once you turn 50, you're invisible, particularly sexually. No one is interested in you. No one finds you attractive, all that sort of stuff. I haven't experienced that. I feel very privileged. I don't feel as though I'm sexually invisible. I don't feel as though no one looks at me or notices me when I walk into the room, as this person described experiencing it. So, in a way, like Casey, I feel like I'm hitting my stride. I'm going boom, 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 and truly becoming Scott Mason, a beloved mentor of mine. When he was around 51, he told me, and I'm younger than him by a significant amount. And he told me he was applying for jobs. And I said, so-and-so, you're such a genius. You're so incredible. You're so dynamic. You're not going to have any problems getting a job. You're not going to have any issues with people respecting you or finding you credible. And he looked at me and he said, Scott, you have no idea what it's like to be over 50. You have never experienced how awful it is. Mm-hmm. And the weird thing is, I haven't. Mm-hmm. I haven't. Someone else told me that I was consulting for about 10, 12 years ago, said, I'm 51. I'm too old for changes. And it's too late. You're trying to persuade me to do something that someone over 50 can't do. Mm-hmm. I'm finding change easier and easier and easier to do. So a lot of the things that people experience through aging, mm-hmm. I'm not experiencing. I don't know if it's because of luck or if it's because of how I am choosing to interact in the world. My suspicion is really the latter. Mm-hmm. That I've chosen age as an opportunity to become more and more and more. And I don't have a certain mindset around turning 35, 40, 50, 22. Mm-hmm. And so, and I'm alive when many people aren't.
Yeah.
So, of course, do I wish am I looking forward to being 90 years old? I don't know. I haven't experienced that yet, but I feel I feel much, much, much less hostile to it than many other of my peers have. And I seem to be experiencing it in a way that's by and large positive, whereas many have expressed at best ambivalence about it. Mm-hmm. What about you? You're about to turn 60, right, Oleg?
Yeah. Getting up to that. No, I got it.
I was going to say, before you go, Oleg, I was going to say to your point, Dan Gilbert, that professor, he did a lot of work on happiness. And he said, I saw a talk of his, and he said how, humans are a work in progress that thinks, a human is a work in progress that thinks he or she is complete. We all think we're completed piece at this moment. Well, no, when at 35, I was still a work in progress, but now I'm my finished product, and we're always a work in progress.
Yeah.
So to the person who's 50, I think he's saying I'm a finished product and I'm a defective product. And you'd say you're still a work in progress. But, Scott, to your point, I think your beneficial attitude around age and life in general is solely due to your perspective. You've made a choice there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I can relate to what Casey said. There was definitely a chapter of my life where I was striving to be a complete masterpiece, so to speak. And then I realized after a while and just through observing other people that I'm always going to be a work in progress. Actually, let me put it to you this way. I think viewing it as a work in progress is a choice. And that's a choice that I would like to make moving forward, is view myself as a work in progress, view myself as this is just the beginning when I step into any new endeavor, because it reaffirms me that there is no completion to the journey. The only completion is supposedly when I'm gone, assuming that that's the completion of it. But that's where I think it just, going back to perspective, I think that to me is another perspective. And I'll also say that I think in regard to aging, so there are different, I feel indifferent about it. And here's why. facial hair, for example, and maybe this has nothing to do with age, but just more so facial hair in general. I will probably continue shaving my face for however long. I don't enjoy facial hair. There's something about it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't sit well with me. The thing that I've come to accept is just because I'm a particular number, as Casey was saying, like 13 is a concept, 28 is a concept for me. I don't know who determined it. I don't know how it happened, but whatever. That's not the point. The point is, how am I choosing to spend the rest of my experience here, and how am I choosing to show up, and how am I choosing to contribute to my life, to the lives of others. Those are the things that are important to me. So when I think of aging, I know that there were times when I was younger, I was afraid of it. I didn't want to get older. I wanted the childhood to last forever. I didn't want responsibilities. I didn't want to be faced with situations that I believe many adults face. And that's what happens when you can't pay a bill. Who do you call? Who do you go to? How do you build up the courage to even have the ask? So there were all these things that I didn't want to have, but through learning and through aging, I realized that even though I was not wanting those things, there was still value in them. There's value in being able to tell someone, I'm sorry, at a particular age. There's value in being able to acknowledge that you don't have the financial means to pay X, Y, and Z. There are greater levels of humility that could be explored, courage, confidence. So that's what I'm trying to get to. But facial appearance, I don't know how I feel about that. So I'm going to keep shaving, and however many years down the road, just come back to you guys and shared with you what I learned, I suppose. You're muted, Scott.
Thank you. That's something that I hate. On the subject of journeys, Casey, how can people follow yours?
I help unhappy attorneys to leave the law and find a dream alternative career. So I'm doing my work at leavelawbehind.com, and you can find me, Casey, Casey, at leavelawbehind.com.
Hey,
Oleg,
this quick question for Casey. This might be a, strange question. Whichever, you make the choice. But which aspect of the law do you think doesn't leave you after you leave the profession?
So most lawyers are, what I hope leaves you is the extreme indexing of risk mitigation. Lawyers want to mitigate risk, but if you go too far, that delves into creativity and you want to control everything. I hope that does leave you. I think what doesn't leave a lawyer when they do leave the law and move on to a non-law career, what doesn't leave the lawyer is the critical thinking, the analysis, the ability to say that emperor has no clothes and to really look at something. And then I'll add the ability to back it up with evidence. So for example, I was doing some strategy work for a client, and the client sent out a video and said, here's someone, watch this short video, and I want to follow what he's doing. Well, I went into the short video, and I transcribed this certain portion. And I said, look at the words. I don't really like what there's nothing here. You want to emulate this? And once a client looked at the words, instead of just listening to it once, said, oh yeah, there's nothing here. I don't want to follow this person's strategy. So I think it's that critical thinking, that analysis, and that ability to really back it up with evidence, even if it's just kind of qualitative evidence, that never leaves a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Oleg, where can people find your journeys?
I think for me, it's two places. One is something that we all are a part of, and it's the organization called Overcoming Odds. It's a podcast. It's a series of conversations where we explore people's strengths and the uniqueness that they bring to the world. The two of you are pretty large catalysts of the work that we do. So actually tomorrow we're going to be hosting a show, a weekly series called Survive to Thrive, Live the Story You Create. And it's a series of conversations where we explore different topics where people are able to essentially create the story that they want. That's one. And then the other leg of that work is called The Power of Your Story, or the other arm. And it's a similar tone, similar space where people can freely express who they are, what makes them feel valued and appreciated in life. And those are the two things where people can find me, one in the room that talks about purpose, and that there's another guy named Scott Mason that does similar work in his own line of work.
Absolutely.
Where might that be?
Scott Mason's Purpose Highway, and it is purposehighway.com. Purposehighway.com. Join me for a race every week down the Purpose Highway.
That's awesome. One other thing that I wanted to mention before we conclude the show is I wanted to just express my gratitude to everyone that's been a part of it. The three of us, Melody, Jessica, her husband. I think this is actually the first time ever that we've had a couple join the show, right?
Jason.
Yeah. So that's a milestone that we've achieved. But I just want to also mention for those that have enjoyed it, if they would consider leaving us a review on Facebook or LinkedIn, that would help us tremendously in supporting what we try and create. And really, it's just a space for people to crack their own nut, so to speak, through an open conversation, and one that is full of acceptance and non-judgment. At least I don't project those things. I can't speak for anyone else because I'm not we. I am I. But that's something that I'll ask of everyone that's still listening or tunes in, is supporting us in the form of leaving us a review on Facebook or LinkedIn.
And before we go, maybe we could take a look at another very special group out there, an organization, Spectrum Designs.
That's a good point. Talking about hating or loving objects. So this is one of them. Can't wait to hear from you. So do we hate it? Do we love it?
Love it. And I will love seeing everybody next.
Yeah.